Welcome to Gear Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris.
I'm Annie.
And this is Brooke.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking all things open water swimming. We're going to break down the theory a little bit, understand why it's a good thing for you to do, and then go into, obviously, gear.
Cold,
but specifically for cold water.
Cold open water swimming.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
otherwise known as winter swimming.
Good point.
And if you haven't been following our memes, I've been dropping some fire cold water memes.
Ice.
So
Some
check
fire
those out.
cold water memes.
Yeah. See what I did there?
Oh, nice. I think this is partially inspired by the Hella's Frostbite Swimrun or something.
It definitely
for sure.
was.
We got us all talking about this. So yeah. So we have a few. We brought the Swimrun labs on as always, and we're going to lean in a little bit on the science for them. And then we're going to talk about the science behind cold water, things you should consider before just doing a cannonball or running straight in and diving in, what happens to your body when you enter cold water. And then after that, we'll get on to gear to help you stay warmer.
Like a head-to-toe breakdown.
A head-to-toe breakdown to be less cold in cold water swimming.
But before that, does anybody have any gear updates?
So sultry.
Am I sounding extra
Why
sultry?
I do, Chris.
Well, I have a new mic stand, so maybe that's it.
You're like gripping it. Yes. So I ran out of my house at the usual 5:15 in the morning to go swimming. We still have pools open here. Well, actually just one pool in Spokane with reservation only. And when I got there, I realized all of my swim gear was in the other car. So
Ooh.
I had to scrounge what was in the backseat of that car and trunk gear to get cobbled together gear, which consisted of a mediocre pull buoy and the paddles that look like seashells. You know what I mean?
Or otter paws.
Otter paws.
Yeah.
Annie, you talked about them in the paddle show.
Yeah, they're like an example of them is the Speedo Nemesis paddle. They have a curve to them.
Yeah. And so, I was just happy I could cobble something together. I didn't have goggles though. So I found some kids goggles at the pool that I used, which were super tight and gave me a massive headache afterwards, but I still swam.
Did you take them off of some kid or something?
You pushed them over?
Give me those goggles, kid.
I just
hey, punk, give me your milk money and those goggles.
And he did. He was very intimidated. Anyway, so I've never swam with these curved paddles before. And I have to say, I did not like them at all because of the type of swim stroke I do. So I like to I do like an early hand entry and a glide, and that might not be the most efficient way. Some people do that big reach and then grab the water way out in front of them. But I kind of like the glide because it makes me feel like a swimming ninja. And you can't do that in these paddles because as soon as you do that, you get resistance because of the curvature. But what they do teach you is that far reach out and a good catch, an initial catch before your pull through on your stroke. So if that's what you need training in, then they're excellent paddles for that. But I will not be wearing these in competition. Yep.
Interesting.
Noted.
And something that we took from for a way more in-depth paddle analysis, check out the Gear Talk Paddles episode. We got some knowledge bombs dropped on us by John Stevens, but he said he's several different kinds of paddles for every thing, different sizes, and I could see you using maybe if you're working on one part of your stroke versus the other. So
they might be good if you're just not getting that catch, but also you got to kind of see, how some people, they just have different types of swim strokes, and for my swim stroke, this isn't a good training paddle because I won't ever swim that way.
I have, I guess, an off-season gear adjustment to my training. I'm ditching just for training, just for the winter, the arc heel buoy, and I'm going with your normal, your regular size buoy, because I forgot who it was. Maybe it was
Shane.
Oh, it was Shane.
Yeah.
Or somebody was saying that they actually feel like they're worse swimmers with the big buoy when they try to swim with nothing, because your body gets so used to having that,
Yeah.
all that flotation. So I'm trying to kind of wean myself off of that. The Archeel's such a powerful drug. I can't have it in full dose. I have to wean off.
Isn't it hard? Isn't it hard to give up though?
Well, I think,
I'm
yeah.
doing the same thing right now, and I have a hard time like grabbing the small buoy because I'm like, the keel is so much fun.
Yeah, so unlike Chipper, who's trying to go cold turkey, I'm taking a more measured approach. Which I mean, I agree with the theory, which like, hey, you should probably try to be a good open water swimmer, and if you're training for swim swimming is different than just training for normal swimming. But what I'm doing is I'm essentially using the keel on Sundays on sort of the extra long day to just keep working on that skill. But then during the week, I'm using the regular baby, the baby.
It feels
pool
like
buoy.
a baby.
Yeah.
I'm also going to start using the band per John Stevens' recommendation.
I use the band year round.
Do you?
Love it.
And with no pull buoy, right? It's just the band.
Oh, I have to have the pull, but I have a whole situation. If you have the band on with nothing, it's like you're dragging your toes on the tile.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Well, so that's what I thought, but I got the impression from John's recommendation that he just uses the band for that
I'm sure
reason.
he does.
Well, John,
He does.
yeah, John's a beast. John's a beast.
Yeah,
He's fine.
he can
With
like
a
get
perfect
enough
body position, you
Yeah.
can probably
Yeah.
pull it off.
If you're
Chipper's like almost
got the dad
drowning.
bod.
Yeah.
I think with enough like flotation in your thighs, natural flotation, you could probably pull it off too.
What, like if
I
you're
got a lot of
gassy
natural
or something?
flotation in my backside. I think I could probably do it.
Okay. We'll report back.
Noted.
That'll be.
I will.
Stay tuned for follow up on that.
Man, while all you guys are doing your pool tricks, Bellingham doesn't have a single pool that's open. And I am swimming in the cold, cold ocean.
Perfect for
Well,
this
great
topic.
segue, Annie.
Thanks.
What are some considerations when swimming in the open water when it's cold?
Oh my gosh. You don't even want to get me started on that. There are many. Golly, where should I start?
Let's start with like what happens, like like kind of chronologically, what happens to your body when you enter cold water.
You start.
All right. So the first thing you will experience, well, actually, the very first thing you will experience before you probably experience this is what Annie and I like to term
Cryo-gina.
cryo-gina. It's a real thing. It's I feel like I'm fine going up to like my knees and my thighs walking in. I'm like kind of motivated and like really hyped up to do this. And then the cryo-gina sets in. Once that is resolved, then the next thing to set in is what is called cold shock. And that's basically your heart rate will increase by more than like 20 beats per minute. Oh. Your blood pressure will increase. So this is why cold water swimming can be potentially threatening for people with cardiovascular issues. You're at risk for a stroke.
And this is why people who do Ironmans and Escape from Alcatraz and stuff like that, like, can have problems when they enter the water. In fact, the first year I did Escape from Alcatraz, somebody died, jumped into the water from Texas.
Jumping in. Yeah, this is why you should not jump in. The other reason why you should not jump in is that you're going to experience part of this cold water shock or cold shock, you're going to experience like a gasp reflex where you just suddenly you gasp. Try to take in a large amount of oxygen. And if you're underwater when you do this, you can
that's a problem.
Immediately drown. Yeah. So the recommendation is to walk in slowly and catch your breath, let your breath stabilize while you're able to, touch the ground and you're not swimming yet. And if you do get that gasp reflex, counterintuitively, you want to kind of actually exhale all the way out so that then you can inhale oxygen afterwards.
And speaking of oxygen, there's something that happens right after cold shock. At least this is where I understand it in the timeline, called the mammalian dive reflex, which is just really cool to even think about because we as humans have this reflex, and like seals have this reflex, and whales have this reflex. Any mammal that spends a fair amount of time in cold water has this reflex, and we have this reflex. It's so cool. So the reflex is basically designed to prioritize oxygen for your most essential organs, which would be your brain, because your brain controls all your other organs. And so what actually happens after you have those major, like the increase in your heart rate, and you said increase in blood pressure too, right,
Yeah,
Brooke?
yeah.
Is that your heart rate then drops so that it can conserve, and like, so it's this massive swing in your heart rate, and your peripheral blood vessels, so all the blood vessels in your arms and legs, constrict to kind of keep your blood supply shunted to your core where the more vital organs are. But ultimately, all of this is done to preserve the oxygen in your blood for your brain, so to maintain organ function. So that's a kind of a nerdy breakdown, but the main takeaway is that this is what allows us to stay in freezing cold water, even though when we first step in and it gets to a certain point, we think we're going to die. This is what keeps us from dying.
Yeah, and in fact, so I learned about this. Actually, I'm going to plug a previous episode. So when we had Adam Skolnick on the show, this is episode 28 for anyone who's following along. He actually wrote a book about free diving called One Breath, and he goes into like a lot of detail into exactly that thing. Like the only reason that humans are able to do this is because we're actually mammals, and a particular type of mammal. It's just totally fascinating. So if you want to check that book out, go for it.
Or if you just want to meditate on the fact that you are a distant relative of a seal.
Yeah.
I think that is so empowering. It's a good thing to think about as you're walking in and you feel that cryo-gina. I am the distant relative of a seal.
Is it Kim Cox? Is she the leading like cold water swimmer? Right
Lynn
now?
Cox.
Lynn Cox. Yeah. She they've done studies on her where like they're pretty convinced she is a seal. Her physiology responds like closer to a seal than it does to a human being.
Yeah, exactly. And her body fat composition is kind of like off, but perfect for a cold water, open water swimmer. Like,
so she just had this special talent, and she somehow found out about it, and now is just like.
Yeah, and she's also she's physiologically predisposed.
Right. Yeah, or like Michael Phelps, who has like huge feet and like giant hands. It's just kind of like he's made to be tall, made to be a crazy swimmer.
Yeah, I think I'm meant to think.
What's also kind of interesting about that, what Annie was saying, like the blood shunting, is because all this blood goes to your core, you are filtering more blood, and you have to pee more. So it's called cold diuresis. So I don't know if you guys experience this, but like when we do swim run races, I like to think it's because I'm really well hydrated, but I think maybe it's a little bit of both. Like if we do swim run races, particularly in cold places like Annie and Orcas, I pee at least 2 times every single swim.
Wow.
No matter like how short the swim is. So I'm just like, and I'm leading the swim. So I'm just like constantly peeing on all over Annie. But I think this is like one of the things. I mean, it could be obviously hydration plays a big role in that, but I think this like cold diuresis where you're just filtering more blood, so you're filtering out more water and urine.
And is that
I wonder if I'd be a faster swimmer if I was swimming through actual water instead of your pee.
Maybe it's my pee that's slowing you down.
Okay, so all that stuff happens. So, and you're talking about entering cold water swimming with a wetsuit or even without. I know some people do the without situation.
Yeah.
So you still take the same measures.
Yeah, with a wetsuit, it's probably muted. But yeah, if you're just
less
going
severe.
in
there. But you do still get cold shock with a wetsuit. So you still have to be careful, to walk in slowly, regulate your breathing before you start to swim beyond the depths that you can reach,
Yeah.
So just for the first couple times, I guess our kind of general recommendation, take it slow, take it easy. Don't just charge in there. Listen to your body. Certain things are going to happen that don't normally happen when you're swimming. So just be ready for those. And
just build
always
up.
swim with a friend if you can.
I think it's interesting to note. So that cold shock, it is truly shocking the first time you get in. And it doesn't take that long to adapt to it. And
you've been doing this for a while in skins. So like, what's your like acclimatization process been?
So swimming in skins is code for swimming with no wetsuit. but I do swim in a bathing suit. And it, I mean, the first time I did it, I could not even put my hands in. I walked in and I was with my swim buddy and we were like, all right, like the Brits do this all the time. We're going to try it. And we walked in and we physically couldn't put our faces or our hands in.
Like pins and needles.
And what's that?
Like pins and needles.
It just felt unsafe to put it was
like a bad idea.
Like, this is a bad idea. So like there was that. So we basically didn't even swim because you can't swim without your hands. And that was the first time. And then from there, like it was not too long before, and I think it's really important to manage your expectations around that initial phase of like, I'm getting started with this. And, you know, us endurance athletes, it almost doesn't count unless you go and do something long. I think that's kind of a dominant mentality around training, but this is a very different type of training. Like it is about endurance, but it is endurance training in very short order, like endurance training in a matter of minutes. Where when you're starting out, don't think about yards, don't think about time. And if you're going to think about time, think about looking at your watch and kind of saying, all right, I'm going to stay in here for 2 minutes and then I'm going to swim 2 minutes back to the shore and then get out. And for some people, that's too much. Like even just walking in like we did, keeping your hands out and then walking out. And the next time you put your hands in, like it's a pretty gradual process. And I think it is very sensible to honor the time it takes to authentically get to where you're like not having a reflex, like this isn't safe around what you're doing. And that's a really valuable skill to have as an endurance athlete because we're always trying to find our edge, but
Sure.
in a sustainable
manner. Yeah. I mean,
so,
there's such a mental thing to being in cold water. So a bunch of years ago, I was training for the original Escape from Alcatraz race, which was with the Dolphin Club and the South End Rowing Club in San Francisco, where you swim from Alcatraz to Aquatic Park, then you ride your bike to Mill Valley, and then you do a double Dipsea trail run, which is about 14 and a half miles with 4,500 feet of climbing. And that was the original course. So true old school swim running and rowing club style. It was without a wetsuit. So that's the first time I'd been swimming consistently in open water without a wetsuit. And I was pretty much trained up for it for, I think, like 4 months, trying to go in 3 times a week. And yeah, it's definitely took some getting used to. I mean, I think I definitely had like this, I always had to like stand in it for a while, for at least a couple minutes before I would even get my sort of go above the upper thigh line for me anyway. But a friend of mine,
the face is the hardest part. Like putting your face in is like a whole new level of cold.
Yeah, the face is tough. But yeah, anyway, so that all worked out. So as someone who never thought I'd be a good cold water, non-wetsuit, open water swimmer, it was mostly just all in my head.
So Chris, did you do the same thing that Annie did, like really gradual, like 2 minutes here? Or
No,
did you go
I mean,
it
wasn't that cold. I mean, it wasn't like Pacific Northwest cold. I think the coldest the water got was like 59 or 58 or something. So still pretty cold, but yeah, it wasn't anything where I was pretty coached up on how to identify if you're getting hypothermia and things like that. But yeah, it was never really a problem.
We should talk about that.
Should.
According to a man who studies how people react to sudden immersion in cold water, he's a researcher over in Europe at the University of Portsmouth named Professor Mike Tipton. He says that it only takes 6 immersions to reduce your cold water shock response by 50%. So learning to adapt so that your heart rate only goes up 10 beats per minute and you can control your breathing. And so it's actually pretty quick where you can adapt to start suppressing that reflex.
And that adaptation will last, they say, like you'll maintain like 50% of that adaptation.
What's the half-life on that?
14 months after
Pretty
you've
good.
done
Whoa.
it. So it's actually,
great.
yeah, like you can miss, weeks of doing it, and then get back to it. But once you've adapted, it hangs on for a long time. Out of the same research.
I think that's a really good point. And I think, when you're talking about trying to not be stressed going into cold water, like it's already a thing. I remember when Chipper's gotten a lot better. I think I could tell this story, but we'd go for a swimmer practice and show up at 7, spend 20 minutes getting ready, and then 10 minutes for Chipper to get into the water kind of thing, to like get himself all coached up to get in the water. So that's already a lot better. But I think like managing your stress helps control your heart rate and your breathing and everything else, right? So if you can get into a place where you're confident going in, then if it's a race situation where you have to, for example, jump off a boat,
or a dock, or
and or some sort of high pressure thing, an Ironman or whatever it might be, it'll help you control all that stuff too.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a good point too. Like in a race situation, that's why I think it's a really good idea, if you can, to go for a short swim before the race, like go into the waters that you're going to be swimming in, and so that you aren't running and then just diving right in to potentially really cold water without having been habituated to it.
Totally. Now, is there any other sort of less sciencey benefits of cold water? Not that this is even possible, but less science. Now, Annie and Chris, with your cold water experience, and Brooke as well. I'm just going to probably just sit on the sidelines for this one, since I will rarely go in without neoprene. But do you find that you're not as stressed before the race about what the water temp is going to be, because you can kind of handle the cold water, or how does it change your approach, or do you feel more hardened and calloused, as the David Goggins would say, when it comes to approaching cold water?
I take it at one day at a time when it comes to approaching cold water. In general, I think that's a really good safety practice to have if you are going to be swimming in really cold water frequently, like Pacific Northwest water. That first swim I'm talking about, where I kept my hands and my face out, was 45-degree Fahrenheit water. And it was, the air temperature was like, it's like, that's a situation where the air temperature plays a role. Sort of how resilient you happen to be feeling that day plays a role, in terms of, did you get good sleep the night before? Have you just done a really intense training block? Is your body run down? Are you trying to fight an illness? Like, there's all these things that you want to sort of be tracking. And so I think, like, if
how close is your car parked so you can run in and turn the heater on?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Did you have tea with you or not? But I think it's almost dangerous to try to strive to be calloused about it, because there's so many factors that change every day that really impact safety. But in terms of a swim run race and thinking about water temperature, this has given me a great amount of confidence that it doesn't matter what temperature the water is.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you're used to swimming in 45-degree water, or you have done it at some point, if you know the water's going to be 65, you're probably like, well, this is a cakewalk kind of thing, because I know I can definitely handle it.
Right.
Basically. Awesome. Okay.
I think a big benefit to, I feel like cold water swimming is to say like open water swimming as like Swimrun is to like trail running or something. And by that I mean like the community of cold water swimmers is just a great bunch of people. Like they're very like nature loving, living kind of in the moment. Because when you're in the cold water, like the benefit that I get from it is I can't think about a damn thing else going on in my life. Like I just have to focus on regulating my breath and going a little bit deeper into the water and like taking another stroke. And for me, like that kind of mental solitude is just so refreshing, especially during this time with just everything that's been going on in all of our lives. Like, it's like the truest form of meditation. Like my husband once, like he's Buddhist, and he like dragged me to this 3-hour meditation. Like my first meditation ever was like sitting on a cushion for 3 hours. Like my foot fell asleep and I couldn't walk out. And he was like, just focus on your breath, focus on your breath. And the whole time I'm trying to focus on my breath, but all these other thoughts are entering my head. You know, it's like really challenging for me.
Yeah, and you got to boot them out. You got to boot out those thoughts.
I know. Yeah. And then just thinking that I'm doing that is another layer of like meta thinking that I'm doing, you know? And, but with cold water swimming, I find that is like the true, purest form of being present and mindful for me. You're very aware of like every part of your body. You're aware of like your internal organs and how they're functioning. Yeah, you're just very in the moment. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's several sports that can be. I mean, probably a lot of sports can be like that, but one that I've had experience with is crewing, where you can't be thinking about anything else because it's so hard to just do everything exactly the same to keep going straight, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think like that's another side of the mental piece of it. It's like, hey, you can be totally immersed, literally, and you're trying not to die. You know, like there's things you need to make sure that you're
be with it.
You have to be with it, which is cool to be able to be so present, I think.
But then the type of people that like attracts too is like an awesome community. You know what I mean? Like the type of people who are drawn to that kind of adventure, I think, are people I really resonate with, and they're like the same type of people I find in Swimrun as well.
I think for the most part, if there's any community where it's like, hey, you're crazy too, like this is awesome. I think those people tend, you know, this is a terrible generalization, but every crazy club I've ever been a part of, they've all been cool.
Totally great people. Yeah. Chris, just jumping off of what you were saying about how another thing you're focusing on is trying to stay alive. It's like, it's kind of it's a radical form of self-care. And I think for a lot of people, self-care is one of these things, these like buzzwords that can be really loaded and hard to do and take time out for yourself and this and that. And like Brooke said, you don't have to schedule it to take time out for yourself. You don't have to, I mean, you have to schedule your swim, but, you know, you don't have to boot any thoughts out about self-care because it is like the most primal act of self-care to keep yourself alive. And that is super therapeutic. And, you know, some of these, there's not a super robust body of research around this, but there's a ton of case studies and generalizations. And the UK's funded a study on swimming that isn't complete yet, but there's a lot of evidence that points to the positive effects of cold water swimming on mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, these kind of things where it just helps people center on themselves.
Love it.
Oh, great. And we'll, is there any books or YouTube videos or anything that you two use or anybody uses that we can always add those in the show notes after the show? If there's any documentation or some of the stuff that was mentioned here, but this is a gear show, so we should talk about, if you're not trying to freeze your ass off, what can you do? There's all sorts of things, so we're going to start from head to toe.
Yes, head's important because I think in terms of regulating heat, your head is one of the main places that you want to make sure is well covered. So anytime you're swimming cold water, you want to make sure like your normal pool swim cap, that's not doing anything. It's not helping store any heat. So you want something a little bit thicker. They make neoprene caps that work as well. I like one from Tier that's designed for cold water. It's kind of like lined and a little bit more waterproofy. And that
like that it's like silver on the inside and black on the outside, pretty thin.
Yeah, but it works pretty well.
Yeah, I wear that one on for races, like cold races.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then they have like the neoprene ones that a bunch of companies make, and those can either come with like where they look like little Darth Vader helmets, where there's like
ear cover,
ear cover things, or there's a chin strap to really have that thing stay on. I'm not a fan of the chin strap. I've tried it, and it just felt a little choky to me.
I must like choky because I like the chin strap.
So any other considerations in terms of swim caps?
Multiple caps is a good idea.
Caps.
Like if you can do a fine job insulating your head if you layer 2 or 3 just standard silicone caps on. That's a good place to start. If you're like, I don't know if I want to spend $30 on a neoprene.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Because as you know, when you're running in the swim run portion of that, you get really hot, but as soon as you take that cap off,
Yep.
it's instant relief. So that's one of the first places to
That's
regulate
what
your temperature.
during a race, that our code word for that is pop the dome. Pop the dome, man.
Not pop the
we
top.
also could talk about a beanie, a little pom-pom toque, if you will.
Yes, that's how the original cold water swimmers do it. No, I don't know.
I don't know
But
either.
you see all that like in Outdoor Swimmer magazine or like actually a really great resource, Annie, you turned me onto this, is Outdoor Swimming Society.
Yes.
Outdoor Swimming Society. They have a lot of great resources too. But as you see all the Europeans with their little pom-pom beanie. And I think I'm kind of a fan of that.
I think it's a look for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if there's any gear manufacturers that make those pom-pom beanies and you want us to, review one for the show. I mean, another thing in sort of the headspace is ear coverage, because if you're not used to swimming in open cold water, if you have sort of the inner ear problem that we've talked about in other episodes where you get disoriented, cold water will definitely magnify that. So if it's already super cold and you're disoriented in the water, that's probably not where you want to be. Also, if you're chronically in cold water, you can get what's basically
Swimmer's
called swimmer's ear, where you can get like calcification, surfer's ears, right? You can get like a calcification in your ear canal. So, you might want to think about putting in some plugs.
It also
Yeah.
lowers your core temperature quicker. It kind of breaks that barrier, cold water inside your ear.
Interesting. It's like that one part in the Death Star where everyone
Yeah,
their
exactly.
big vulnerability inside the ear. Okay.
Don't tell the resistance
spoilers,
about my
though.
ears.
No spoilers. Okay, so besides the head, I assume we're going to go down to wetsuit, or is there anything on the face, or is there
I was going
whole-
to ask, Anna, do you wear any like, the blubber kind of
Like
rub?
Vaseline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that one time, and I did not feel like it made a notable difference, and it was a mess.
I could see it being
Yeah.
a pain in the ass to clean up.
I did that before a race, and it was I just looked like, it didn't look good.
Wasn't a bad look.
It wasn't a good look.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good look.
Okay. And then there are several brands that offer thermal style suits. I know Blue 70 has one of those. Roka has a thermal or a warmer suit. Orca. Chris, are you familiar with?
I don't know. I mean, I know they have a thick one, but I don't know if they would call it as thermal. I mean, from our interview back in the day with
John Duquette.
he was saying what the difference.
CEO of
What
Blue
episode,
70.
Chris? What episode?
I think
It was
it's
like 7 or something. Before 10.
Yeah, it was 7. I think I'll check on that. But what he was saying is like the difference between a regular wetsuit and a thermal wetsuit, it has like a liner that
Yes.
Apparently makes a
Huge difference.
huge difference.
So I have the Blue 70 thermal,
Oh.
and it's like a fleece liner inside, and it's so comfy. It
Sounds
feels like you're
cozy.
putting on onesie pajamas before you go swimming. So we use that. Like I have only done skins a couple of times, but mostly we swim in our thermal wetsuits when we go like in the lakes around here, and that keeps us really warm. Like the thing that is kind of the breaking point is more like our like getting brain freeze and kind of getting worried that we're going to get hypothermic or cold incapacitated or whatever. So
Now might be a good time to go back to what Chris was saying about how you were all trained up on how to self-monitor for onset
What are
of
the warning
hypothermia.
signs of hypothermia?
yeah. So
Go for
I'm kind of always like thinking or just weary of that, because where we swim, there's no exit points. Once you start swimming out, you have to swim back. So you have to be really,
You're like a
monitoring
helicopter.
You gotta
how
make it
far
back.
out
Gotta
you're
make sure
going.
you got enough fuel to make it back.
Yeah. And so like one of cold incapacitation is what it's called when your form starts breaking down. Like all the blood being shunted to your core is being shunted away from your muscles, so they're not performing as optimally. So you lose like coordination. You will start going slower. You could start kind of almost getting like a brain fog or like difficulty kind of thinking. And And that happens well before hypothermia sets in. So I was reading something that like 50% of cold water swimmers, if they die from cold incapacitation and then drowning, not from hypothermia.
Oh my God. That's
Hypothermia doesn't set in until like your body temperature is like less than 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's like well beyond cold incapacitation. So that's your first cue, is like if you start feeling like your form is breaking down, you can't coordinate your arms and your legs anymore, you should get out.
Well, you know, the cue that I learned from all the old white people at the Dolphin Club was if you hold your hand straight and you hold your fingers just like in a normal position, if it's not whether you can move them up and down, but if you can move them from like side to side, I don't know how to visualize that, but if you're just kind of like splaying, if you're like splaying your fingers, if you're having difficulty do that, they're like, oh, that's an early sign that you're getting hypothermic. But I think probably what they meant is sort of the cold incapacitation based on what you're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something where I'm
do,
super
like,
mindful of.
Coordination things. Like if you can't like flip your finger, pronate or supinate your hand, like flip them up and down or back and forth.
A field
like
sobriety test?
Yeah, like finger to nose to target. Like those are all just like if you can't coordinate your movement, then get out of there.
Hey, that's very helpful. We should probably, put some sort of fancy music.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw in a disclaimer too. Don't listen to us. Go research this on your own. We'll link to stuff.
And for more on survival in cold water, the outdoorswimmingsociety.com website is rich. Like,
oh my gosh,
go there and dive in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, if you're concerned at all, like we should also say, like, disclaimer, if you do have an underlying health condition, like high blood pressure,
please consult your doctor before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fading all.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay. So Brooke, I'm hearing a recommendation for a thermal wetsuit.
So we can talk more in depth about that wetsuit on another show, but we love the Blue 70 thermal. There's one minor thing that we don't love about it, but we were able to fix with that seal, that aqua seal.
So it keeps you relatively more warm.
It keeps you very warm. Yeah.
When you're
like,
actually swimming.
I don't notice my core being cold.
Just your hands
at all.
and feet.
It's more my extremities. And then once my extremities get really cold, I worry about then my core getting it. So I'm probably play it a little bit more on the safe side than some other people. Like I get out well before I'm shivering. I'm never shivering in the water.
That's actually another sign. You shouldn't be shivering in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a problem. Okay, and then onto the hands, they have a similar neoprene kind of glove or some even webbed sort of gloves. Does anybody use any of those?
I've tried the Zone 3 gloves and the Blue 70 gloves. And actually, I swim skins, so no wetsuit. Occasionally, I will wear a wetsuit for a longer swim, and I just wear a normal triathlon wetsuit, 3-2. I don't like getting my hands cold because it's painful. And that's like, I even wear gloves when I swim skins. I wear gloves and I wear little socks. I actually wear my Sea Avenger Sea Snugs.
Yeah.
But the Zone 3 gloves and the Blue 70 gloves are very thin. And
the Blue 70 are useless.
Hot take.
Yeah. Not worth the $45 sticker price?
Nope.
I got those and I was so disappointed. They might be good for running.
They might be good.
It was like wearing like fancy dinner gloves out or something.
Like gloves that you'd wear to the ball or to play the piano.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like
they did absolutely nothing.
Like if you were Michael Jackson, you'd only have one of them.
Yes. Fashion gloves.
Yes.
So I wear these gloves that I got at a marine supply store, and they're just this like off. I don't know what they are, kind of a random brand.
Probably
they're
like
called
Fisherman.
Aqualung Sport, but I think they're made for water skiing or like water sports.
Or fishermen.
Or maybe fishing. Yeah, it's important to have a good fit because if your glove fills up with water, that's a heavy arm to swing around.
And I'm really excited about these gloves. I haven't tried them yet, but I just got the NRS Maxim glove. They're a paddle glove. And it was highly recommended by one of our friends out on Whidbey Island, and who does year-round open water swimming. And she swears by these things. So they just came. They fit beautifully. They have that fleece lining like the Blue 70
they look cozy.
Wetsuit does. I think they're 4 millimeters. Because my husband has some 5 millimeter gloves,
They're
and it just
3.
feels like Mickey Mouse. Oh, 3. Okay. Because he has 5 millimeter gloves, which definitely keep your hands toasty, but they're like Mickey Mouse gloves. They're like massive. It's like wearing paddles, except water gets in them, and so then you're like, it's like an extra heavy recovery stroke. So I'm really excited to test these out, and I can let you know once I try them. But
Cool. Nice. And then down,
I guess it's just
down,
booties.
down to the booties.
Yeah.
Your feet. Booties on your feet, not your booty.
Yeah, booties on your feet.
Yeah. Unless you do
I
something
used
for your
to
booty.
wear. Brooke, stop sitting on my foot. I used to wear the Blue 70 swim sock, which kept my feet nice and warm and were not too hard to take off. And then they got big holes in the feet, which
Just from walking into the water.
just
kind of
from
thing.
walking into the water. And now I wear the Sea Avenger Sea Snugs, and they're not showing any signs of wearing out in the sole. And that is what they're for.
Would you be updating your? Yeah, they're for playing beach volleyball.
Yeah, they're super durable
Would
on
so
the bottom.
are you?
no, not in hot weather though, Chris, because
Are-
they get too sweaty.
Yeah.
Are you going to change your pool buoy recommendation for them now that you've found?
Well,
this
I
other
gave
use?
them 2. One was for
That's right.
actual swim run, and one was
Yeah.
for other applications. So
Yeah.
they're good for other applications.
Okay. All right.
Right. So
It
it's
should also be noted that your entries, Annie, are like
Barnacle rocks.
barnacle covered rocks. Yeah, they're so painful. It's so painful, and they're so sharp.
is there any additional layers underneath if someone, would you want to wear a longer jammer shorts for guys or
Like long john,
like a rash guard or anything? Is additional layers
I
going to help
recommend
you?
your
kind of?
Chez Misk sweatshirt.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about
Underneath
what happens when you
your
get
wetsuit?
out of the water.
No, I'm totally joking. Don't wear that underneath.
That sounds
That would be
yeah.
horrible. It's cotton.
Well, I think Team Precision Hydration UK, they mentioned a product that they use in cold water, which I think bears repeating, which was they have like a Zone 3 neoprene undershirt that it isn't like a kangaroo top, but it adds like just an extra layer of thickness in the core region. They seem to swear by it. I'm sure there's other
and
people. I think Orca
there's
makes
a guy on our boat, on our ship when we were at Catalina. Do you remember him, Annie? What was his name? But he wears smart wool, like a smart wool.
Was it Cal?
Cal, yeah. Cal wears a smart wool.
Shout out to Cal from Canada.
Yeah, Cal
Oh,
from
yeah.
Canada. Yeah, smart wool undershirt and he wore it in Catalina actually to stay warm because he tends to get cold.
one. Oh,
So that should be an
Interesting.
option. Wool is always good, right?
So train
Feels
in
good.
that.
as long as it get itchy. I guess that's what you have a partner for. Hey, can you scratch my back?
That's a good point. While you're undoing the tether, just give me a little
A little scratch on
Yeah.
the shoulder blade.
my scapula.
Right there.
please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right there.
It's episode 41 for anyone
Harder.
who's playing at home for Team Precision Hydration UK.
Good pull.
I looked it up.
Okay.
That's not from memory.
Now,
I know. I was like, you're like Rain Man.
What do you
Crazy with your
do?
episodes.
after your cold water swim, do you just run into your car, turn the heater on blasting? Do you run into the sauna? Do you jump into a hot shower? Do you jump into a spa?
No.
What should you do? What
No
should you not
jumping.
do?
No jumping.
No jumping.
Don't ever jump anywhere. No, not true.
So walk briskly to where? What's a good
I like to put,
reacclimation?
we just ordered Red Original like dry robes.
Ooh,
That's on my
Chipper.
Christmas
Chipper's
list.
been eyeing those
My
for a
holiday
while.
list.
Yeah.
This is my third season with my dry robe.
Oh,
It is indispensable because rewarming is actually something that you want to be pretty mindful about how you do. If you just pour hot water over yourself or hop into the hot tub or sedentarily sit in your
sauna.
car with the heat blasting, you're not actually allowing your body to use its own tools to rewarm at a sustainable pace so that you don't have basically another cold shock. Because remember how all of your blood centralized at your core to keep your brain and vital organs alive? When you rapidly rewarm your arms and legs and your skin, all that blood goes shooting out to the periphery and away from those very important organs. So it actually causes your core temp to drop even further after you're out of the water. So you want to gradually rewarm by just redressing as quickly as you can, removing your wet stuff, multiple layers of warm clothing, doing some exercise with some of the larger muscles of your body. So the biggest muscles in your body are like your quads and glutes. So doing deep squats is a great way to sort of pump that blood back through your body in a way that's sustainable. Drinking a hot beverage is great, but if you want to run up the hill, that's great. There's one swim spot.
And eating sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
The sugar warms you up.
Tea and cake, basically.
A fika. A fika.
Yeah.
Go get a fika.
That's like
for
Chipper's
yourself.
favorite word. What I found interesting when I was swimming in open water without a wetsuit extensively was when I would get out, I would start generating, like my body would just get so hot. Like I would just super hot. Like I don't even know. I was just like generating like so much body heat. Just like, I don't know.
Nuclear reaction going on inside?
I mean, I was like uncomfortable. Like I would, I'd have to, I'd change and all that stuff. But then once I sort of got over being cold, I would just get like crazy hot.
Wow. Because usually you get your body continues to get cold like up to 30 minutes after you've gotten out of the water. Like it'll continue to cool and you'll get what they call after drop, which is where like all that, your blood is now cold or colder. And then that goes out to that starts circulating through your body again, that cold blood. And then you feel cold again. I don't know. Like I can actually feel it. I feel like I can feel the blood go to certain arteries and in my body and be like, ooh, that's my after drop. Like it brings like a whole new level of body awareness. But that's interesting that you generate a lot of heat. Maybe like really well adapted for this, Chris.
I don't know. I mean, I always thought that as a Puerto Rican, like I had no business being cold, but
yeah. Oh, you're just hot. Maybe. It's great.
Yeah, hot, caliente.
Well, it does make a great case for a swim run, like that whole after drop thing. Just get out of the freezing cold water and start running.
Yeah, warm it up. Yeah, warm it right up.
Now, I mean,
and you've done a lot of winter swim runs, Annie, right?
Yeah, you warm up. It's great. It is the easiest way to warm up is just don't do a single thing except run.
Yeah. And keep your cap on.
Yeah.
Keep your suit zipped up. All those kind of things. Keep that heat kind of inside.
So we talked about gear, but I think this is a swim run podcast. So we should talk about any sort of specific things for swim run in cold water. I think, Chipper, you just started alluding to it, like don't cab down if you're cold, right? Like let yourself warm up. Keep your swim cap on is a great way to retain heat if you're getting out of the water cold. Trying to warm up your hands.
Sea snugs.
Yeah, make sure you're wearing the right socks.
Because this happened in Catalina, I think the longer run, like the 10K run, because we started hiking some of it because it was pretty steep. I actually started kind of shivering, but I had been cabbed down because the earlier part of the run I was cooking.
Right, yeah, when we got to the top and it was windy.
It was really windy and it was kind of cutting me a little bit. So put my wetsuit back on, zipped it up, put my swim cap on, and kind of we started jogging and running, and that saved me for the whole day. Like having that, knowing to just put your swim cap on, like keep so much heat in when you're running is a big.
Yeah, well, it's interesting.
Just run faster.
Yeah, because it's like heat regulation. Anytime you're doing anything in a wetsuit, I think heat regulation is something to stay on top of. But it's an interest. It sort of takes on a different dimension if it's cold, right?
There were a lot of people that didn't finish the Catalina race because they got too cold.
Yep.
Yeah, and it kind of compounds over time. Like if you haven't bounced back from being cold and then you have to go swim again and then swim again, it's really hard to come back from.
It's kind of like
layering
balking.
cold upon cold. Another thing for training and racing is to just consider the increased fueling needs for when you are cold. Like it burns a massive amount of calories to be cold, and it requires a massive amount of calories to warm back up. Kind of maybe overshooting what you might typically eat for the same distance.
That's a major pro tip for cold races. Bring extra nutrition. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same for like transitions. Like we talked a little bit about the dizziness stuff coming out of the water. Like there's like one form of dizziness where it's like stimulating your inner ear, your vestibular system, and that's why you feel dizzy. But there's also like proprioceptively, like your where how you feel your body in space, like feeling the ground, feeling your joint, where your joints are in space. Yeah, like that can get numb in the cold too, so that when you leave the water, you feel like you're kind of running.
Then you like slip and break your face.
Yeah, on blocks.
Super disoriented, yeah.
So it's good to just, and then not only to mention going from horizontal to vertical, like the hypotension, the blood pressure drop you can get with that. So you can like especially with the blood pressure regulation, like you can train for that. You know, you can just do a bunch of transitions, you know, to train your body to quickly stabilize, you know, once you're out of the water, and then you're reducing.
Well, you know, that's something, this one's easy to remember, but episode 2, which is way back machine, when we was talking with Coach Michael Lozinski, one of the things he said that, you know, training, like doing deck ups and stuff like that is a great way to train from going horizontal to vertical. But he also said like picking up your pace as you're about to exit the water so that you're already kind of elevating your heart rate and like basically moving a lot of blood.
Brilliant.
So then when you get out, your body's already kind of pumping, so it helps kind of spread that blood out.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, so kind of a workout that Chris and I would do. I'm going to act like we did this, you know, several times a month, but it was like one time in a training block we did this. But we did like 10 hundreds, and then after each 100, you kind of finish fast on the last quarter and then do a deck up and then turn around and just jump back in and do another 100. And we did 10 of those to finish.
And deck ups with paddle and pull buoys.
Yeah.
It's like, it's precarious.
But good entertainment for those watching.
For sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
People were like, what the hell's wrong
At
with
the
these people?
aqua joggers next in the lane next to us. Well, I think we covered a lot today. A lot of science, a lot of some gear, and all having to do with frigid.
Yeah, we recommend listening to this episode in a Snuggie or some sort of like comfy blanket.
By a fire.
Poncho.
And we're also we're in the process of writing like a research rundown of all the benefits of cold water swimming. Because there's a lot of like great research coming out about kind of preventing dementia. And then obviously like benefits for pain and mental health and inflammation.
The immune system.
So we're going to write an article that kind of compiles all the current research on that. So if people are interested in just learning about the health benefits, they can go to swimrunlabs.com and check that out.
Awesome.
Can't wait to read that.
Well, as ever, thank you guys. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Yeah.
Chip, are you going to try some cold water swimming?
I got to say, I was a little inspired.
Were you?
Let's do it. Let's go.
Do it.
Let's do
that
it.
was my goal.
No
it doesn't
wetsuit.
have to be a swim Chip. It can just be a nice little chat.
I have
in
a really heavy,
the water
with
your
face
friend
and
Chris.
hands out.
What was the word that we were using? Something would.
You actually did an
something
open
gina?
water swim without a wetsuit.
My
Cryo-gina.
Well,
You'll have
this
to
is a
report
fun
back on that.
factoid. I actually have a picture. I have evidence of
that's not
this.
a good photo of
It's
me.
not a good photo, but I have evidence of a New Year's Day when we were both in the same triathlon. Well, we're still in the same triathlon club, but we always do like a New Year's Day polar bear swim, and he went in there guns blazing, just in his little Speedo, and then came out right away. But you went in.
I did go
You did
in.
it. That was peer pressure. I don't know.
Oh, certainly peer pressure.
Well, if that's how it goes, then you should go in, Chip. Right, guys? Shouldn't he?
Yes.
Let's
do
I have
it.
to find
Do
my,
it.
I mean, you don't have to. I don't take much convincing for like.
Do it.
Yeah, for bad
this.
ideas.
Yeah, for bad ideas.
Yeah.
I pretty much already said yes like 30 seconds ago. But
That's why, that's why
okay.
Chipper's the best.
I
That's
just
why
like
he's the
providing
best.
peer pressure.
Let us know what kind of tea you like.
oh, coffee.
cake.
Coffee?
Coffee.
Yeah, coffee
Okay,
tea.
coffee.
Tasty.
Yeah, but goes over. Thank you for listening to the Low Tide Boys, a swim run podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review on iTunes if you're so inclined.
You can also sign up for our newsletter at lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z. And check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, drop us an email at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Writing Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swim run activities, hobbies, and other bullshit we do.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
And then a run,
And then another swim.
then another run,
And then another swim.
and then run to the finish line, and just keep going until you're done.
Yes, or
Until you cross the finish line.
or run to the car.
Have that thing stay on. I'm not a fan of the chin strap. I've tried it and it just, felt a little choky to me.
I must like chokey because I like the chin strap.
Yeah, well,
Fit you a
Yeah.
snug,
each their own.
sneeze nut. God damn it!
You want to try that one again?
Hold on, this joke's gonna really kill. Never, I can't do it now. I'm cutting that whole thing out.
No.
No, well, at least put in the
can't do
outtakes or
At
something.
least from the outside. There's going to be a joke about the sea
snug
snug.
is a sea snug.
A snug are those
Yes.
sea snugs.
I like to be sea snug in
I like to
everything
be
that I do.
It was snuggy. Was it sea snuggy?
Too many. It was very
Super sea
slippery in
snuggy.
my mouth.
Funny. Yeah. So